Game over. President Trump tweets video of John Bolton praising his very warm and cordial Zelensky calls. Hello and welcome to TST. If you're new to the channel, tap on the subscription button and press the notification bell so you can receive news and updates that you can rely on daily. According to President Donald Trump, any chances, however slim, that congressional Democrats had of convicting him are officially dead. And as evidence of this assertion, early Wednesday evening, the president unveiled a telling video clip that shall henceforth be known as Exhibit A. Recorded last August, Exhibit A features then National Security Advisor John Bolton speaking with Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty about the president's phone calls last year to Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. One of the calls was the allegedly controversial July 25th one, in which Trump asked his Ukrainian counterpart to look into credible allegations of corruption surrounding both the 2016 U.S. presidential election and former Vice President Joe Biden. "I will be meeting President Zelensky. He and President Trump have already spoken twice." The president called to congratulate President Zelensky on his election and on his success in the parliamentary election. Exhibit A shows Bolton saying of the calls, "They were very warm and cordial calls. We're hoping they'll be able to meet in Warsaw for a few minutes together because the success of Ukraine maintaining its system of representative government, a free market economy free of corruption, and dealing with the problems of the Donbass in the Crimea are high priorities here, obviously, but high priorities for the United States as well." Take a watch.
We'll be meeting President Zelensky. He and President Trump have already spoken twice. President called to congratulate President Zelensky on his election and then on his success in the parliamentary election. They were very warm and cordial calls. We're hoping that they'll be able to meet in Warsaw and have a few minutes together because the success of Ukraine, maintaining its freedom, its system of representative government, a free market economy free of corruption, and dealing with the problems of the Donbass and the Crimea are high priorities here, obviously, but high priorities for the United States as well.
How does this prove the president's assertion, game over, that the left's case against him is now moot? With every other tactic against the president having failed, in recent days, congressional Democrats have placed their hopes in Bolton, who has a forthcoming memoir in which it's been reported he complains about both the president's policies toward Ukraine and his otherwise warm and cordial calls with Zelensky. Over dozens of pages, Mr. Bolton described how the Ukraine affair unfolded over several months until he departed the White House in September. The New York Times reported Tuesday after obtaining a draft copy of the memoir. He alleges that after the president's July phone call with the president of Ukraine, he raised with Attorney General William Barr his concerns about Mr. Giuliani, who was pursuing a shadow Ukraine policy encouraged by the president, and told Mr. Barr that the president had mentioned him on the call. In other words, in the book, Bolton claims that he had issues with the president's second phone call with Zelensky. Yet, his statements to Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty seem to contradict these claims. The former National Security Advisor also reportedly describes a phone conversation he had with the president in August. The same month, he went on to speak positively to Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty about President Trump's Ukraine policy. President Trump told his National Security Advisor in August that he wanted to continue freezing $391 million in security assistance to Ukraine until officials there helped with investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens, the Times reported. Congressional Democrats have claimed that this temporary freezing of aid was at the center of a disputed quid pro quo demand that the president used to try to coerce Zelensky into launching investigations into the 2016 election and Biden. The president has also disputed this claim as well. "I never told John Bolton that the aid to Ukraine was tied to investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens. In fact, he never complained about this at the time of his very public termination. If John Bolton said this, it was only to sell a book." With that being said, the transcripts of my call with President Zelensky are all the proof that is needed. In addition to the fact that President Zelensky and the Foreign Minister of Ukraine said there was no pressure and no problems. Additionally, I met with President Zelensky at the United Nations. Democrats said I never met, and released the military aid to Ukraine without any conditions or investigations and far ahead of schedule. I also allowed Ukraine to purchase Javelin anti-tank missiles. My administration has done far more than the previous administration. These claims and rebuttals come amid an effort by the White House to throttle the publication of Bolton's book up until the former National Security Advisor removes what the administration is claiming to be an abundance of classified material. In a leaked letter to Bolton's attorney sent last week before the Times obtained a draft copy, a National Security Council official warned that the book appears to contain significant amounts of classified information and is thus not ready for publication. The media have rushed to Bolton's defense, arguing that his extensive experience proves that there's no way his book would contain classified information. But critics, including some of whom have rightly noted how Democrats and their media allies used to distrust Bolton, have argued that the former advisor has always been untrustworthy. That's who John Bolton is. That's who John Bolton has always been. That's what John Bolton does. And not to brag, but we called it long ago. One critic, Tucker Carlson of Fox News, opined this week. Take a watch.
Guess what's still going on? You guessed it, the impeachment trial continues this hour. The president's legal team, currently speaking, will dip in live if anything newsworthy happens. Think back to 2016 and the campaign then. Donald Trump used to recite a poem about a woman who took a dying snake into her house and nursed it back to health. The snake did become healthy and then immediately whipped around and bit the woman. As she breathed her last breaths, the woman asked the snake, "Why did you do this?" "Well, because I'm a snake," was the reply. "That's what we do." All of which somehow reminds us of disgraced former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Republicans in Washington tonight seem shocked to discover that Bolton has turned and betrayed his former boss, Donald Trump. But they shouldn't be shocked. That's who John Bolton is. That's who John Bolton has always been. That's what John Bolton does. And not to brag, we called it long ago. Yesterday, the New York Times reported that Bolton's new book contains sections designed to help the Democratic case for impeachment. Bolton accuses the president of delaying military aid to Ukraine in order to pressure its government into investigating Hunter Biden. Again, people in Washington seem stunned by this, or claim to be. If Bolton disliked Trump so much, they wonder, why did he join the administration? Well, the answer is simple. Bolton wanted war with Iran. He's always wanted war with Iran. He's obsessed with it. Here he is, for example, gleefully fantasizing about regime change there long before he became National Security Advisor. Watch.
I have said for over 10 years since coming to these events that the declared policy of the United States of America should be the overthrow of the mullah's regime in Tehran. And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. Thank you very much.
In Tehran! But Iran wasn't Bolton's only target. He also wanted more war in Syria and war in Venezuela, too. He wanted the war in Afghanistan to continue until your great-grandchildren are too old to serve. And of course, like all neocons, he wanted war with Russia. Lots of it. In 2016, Bolton cited Russia as one of America's greatest threats. Can you imagine? But not China. For Bolton, every conflict was the final test of America's resolve and a chance to use overwhelming military force. Maybe because he never served in the military himself, Bolton genuinely, passionately loved war. In the end, of course, he didn't get it. Trump blocked him at the brink of more than one conflict. Bolton finally left in well-deserved humiliation. Bolton's resignation was one of the highlights of the president's first term, a day of celebration for normal people everywhere, but not in America's newsrooms. The media were sad to see John Bolton go. They love wars. Wars mean they get to move tanks around on a screen and talk about weapon systems. And so suddenly, for the first time, they love John Bolton. What a hero he was.
Bolton is something different. He's one of them. And he's not prone to just lying.
And you have to give him the benefit of the doubt on credibility because this president deserves zero it did feel like we were marking time and this was becoming a planned acquittal.
Right.
And yet we have a Perry Mason moment.
Who are you going to believe, Donald Trump or John Bolton? You could believe probably a dead frog more than you could believe Donald Trump at this point.
John Bolton is a lot of things, but able to be painted as the deep state actor is not one of them. So good luck with that. Republicans can now exhale and acknowledge that the earth is round, that Donald Trump is indeed corrupt. They can rely on a man who is the Republican version of Justice Scalia in foreign policy circles, a conservative's conservative.
A conservative's conservative, says a liberal. In fact, the only thing John Bolton helped conserve over the past 20 years is Raytheon's stock price. He did a good job there. The many pointless conflicts he's been pushing are not conservative. They're just the opposite of that. They're a big part of the reason our middle class is dying. That seems obvious to you. It's not obvious here. In Washington, counterproductive wars are a virtue, not a vice. Just ask Mitt Romney, one of their biggest champions. Over the last week in the Senate, Romney has made a ton of ambivalent noises about having relevant witnesses testify to the public. Hunter Biden, Adam Schiff, the whistleblower who shall not be named? I'm not sure. Not really necessary, says Mitt Romney. But John Bolton? Mitt Romney would love to see his old friend John Bolton testify before Congress. Keep in mind that Bolton was once a, quote, senior foreign policy advisor to Romney's doomed presidential campaign, and clearly they're still friends.
I think with the story that came out yesterday, it's increasingly apparent that it would be important to hear from John Bolton. It's pretty fair to say that John Bolton has a relevant testimony to provide to those of us who are sitting in impartial justice.
Will John Bolton testify? Who knows? Either way, it won't change the outcome. Trump will be acquitted. This is a totally stupid sideshow. We'll be embarrassed about it later. But it's worth taking this moment to pause and think about John Bolton himself for a moment anyway. How did a guy who disagrees so completely with everything that Donald Trump ran on and won on, how did that guy wind up in a position of power in the White House? Good question, because he's not the only one.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And haven't you checked out the official TSD store yet? It has a variety of Patriot-themed custom t-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, phone cases, and tons more. Make sure to take a look and maybe help us out with picking some products for yourself and your loved ones at great prices. It does make a huge difference to what we're doing here. Link in the description below. If you've liked this report, let us know by tapping that like button down below, share the news among friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more news and updates on TSD. This is David Ravine, and I'll catch you in the next one. Till then, take care.